Thank you, Madam Toastmaster, and greetings, fellow Toastmasters. I'm going to tell the story today of a mythical, near life-changing trip that I was able to take. And the location of that trip was Midway Atoll. In my introduction that Chana didn't quite get, I mentioned that I am currently a trip leader for the Sierra Club. That's a relatively new thing, but I've been going on Sierra Club trips since the 1980s. So this trip was a Sierra Club trip. It was a service trip. So normally Sierra Club service trips, you do things like help to build a trail or paint a fence or pull weeds. This was a bit cushier than that. We were helping a dolphin researcher to collect data about dolphins. So we were pretty much following dolphins around all day. I'm going to talk more about that in a little bit, but first I want to give you some information about Midway Atoll. So as its name suggests, it is about halfway between Asia and North America in the Pacific Ocean. I was lucky enough to be living on Maui at the time I went there, so it wasn't quite such a trek, but it was still about a 4-hour flight from Maui out to Midway Atoll. So this location in the middle of the ocean made it very important during World War II. There was a Navy base there, and it was attacked on the same day as Pearl Harbor, and then 6 months later, the Battle of Midway happened. There are at least a couple of movies about this battle. When I was there, we were lucky enough to be able to go on a military history tour of the island, and it was really amazing to be able to hear the stories while standing in the spot where things actually happened. Being out in the middle of the ocean makes the spot also important for seabirds, specifically the Laysan albatross, which are also known as Goonie birds. And when they're there, they pretty much take over the whole island. They do a nest count every year, and this past year, the count was about 500,000 nests. So that's at least 2 birds per nest. So you can imagine it is just covered with albatross. And when I was there, the chicks had hatched and they were starting to learn how to fly. You can see from the pictures, they're pretty big chicks. When they're full grown, their wingspan is up to 7 feet wide. Other wildlife that's there are the endangered Hawaiian monk seal, the green sea turtle, and what I was there to watch were the spinner dolphins, which are called that because they spin on their axis when they leap out of the water. So the researcher is this woman on the left, and she was collecting data on the dolphins while they were in the atoll area, and we were trying to help her. And the way that usually worked out is that in the morning, we would go out to these platforms. This was the coolest platform. And keep an eye out for the dolphins returning from the ocean, because at night they would swim out into the open ocean to fish, and then in the morning they would come back. And she wanted to know which direction are they coming back from and what time are they arriving back in the lagoon. And so we would collect that information, mark it down, and once they were in the lagoon, we would head to the boat ramp where we would get on this little boat and head out into the lagoon looking for the dolphins. And then when we found them, we would follow them around for a while. We would be collecting GPS points with a little GPS tool. This was in 2002, so it was older technology than we have now. And also she would call out information and we would mark it down for her. She was looking for ways to identify individual dolphins in the group, and that was usually by scars that they had, or the shape of their dorsal fin, or there might be notches in the dorsal fin. So we would follow the dolphins around for a while, collect as much data as she needed, and then we would return to the lab to help document the data for her. And one day she said, "Is anyone here good with maps?" And I raised my hand because I work with maps all the time. That was my full-time job. And I said, "I'm good with maps." And she handed me a piece of graph paper and a pencil and said, and you get the GPS coordinates off the device and plot out a map to show where the dolphins traveled this day, which I did. And then I gave it back to her and I said, you know, there's a really better way to do this. There's software out there that would make this automatic, and then you could store more data with each point and you could have better maps. Basically, it would be, if what's on the graph here it was in pencil, it would be the difference between what's on the one side and what's on the other side. And she said, you know, we have that software, but nobody here knows how to use it. So that was bonus number one for me, which was they paid for me to go back to Midway Atoll to teach them how to use their GIS software. And I was thrilled to do it. I was thrilled to get a second trip out there, and it was fun getting to teach them. And the second bonus happened while I was there, because as we were planning my trip out there, I mentioned to them that I was in massage school. I was taking night classes and getting licensed to be a massage therapist. And it turned out there was a high demand for massage on Midway Atoll. So when I got there, I got off the plane and they handed me a schedule, and every day I had at least 2 massages along with the GIS classes I was teaching. And I wasn't surprised, because these scientists are spending most of their day holding up heavy binoculars or heavy cameras, or they're lying on the ground for hours waiting for a turtle to move. And so they needed the massages and I needed the practice. And the second bonus was when I went home from that trip, I had extra money in my pocket. That is my story of spinner dolphins, Goonie birds, and 2 bonuses. Back to you, Madam Toastmaster.